Trump is being arrested and indicted. But is there a real legal case against him that couldn't be applied to his opponents? And also, is more time being spent on trying to bring down Donald Trump than assessing the problems that led to his rise? Hello there, you 6.4 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage to truth and freedom. At a time of crisis and chaos, there is more reason than ever before to find new unions, to start new conversations, and to assess systemic problems rather than their systems. Turn on the notification bell and subscribe right now. We make this content every day, and we want you to see all of it, particularly at a time like right now, where the theatre of global politics is focusing on vilification and distraction rather than addressing the problems that most people are feeling. And of course, we're talking about Donald Trump, who more than anybody else epitomizes the challenge of modern politics. I know a lot of you love Donald Trump. You see him as the representative of your anger, of anti-establishment rhetoric, of possibility for meaningful change. My personal feeling is that during Trump's presidency, not enough changed to warrant his rise. That's something we can continue to talk about in the chat. I believe what's required is systemic change. This particular case, and we'll get into the logistics of it to a degree in a moment, because of course it's still sealed and no one really knows exactly what's going on, seems comparable at least to the Democrats' funding of the Steele dossier through legal funding, if not exactly the same. But isn't that what characterizes our time? That the differences between the two parties, the differences between their misdemeanors and their felonies is not significant enough? And isn't Donald Trump, above all else, serving as a kind of distraction and focal point for Democratic ire, rather than an opportunity to meaningfully change the systems that led to his rise in the first place?
We are coming on the air with historic news. For the first time ever in American history, a former president of the United States has been indicted.
In a way, they are still committing the sins that they've always committed around Donald Trump. Using hyperbole and excitement, even from the position of condemning Trump, they celebrate Trump. It's quite likely, as many people have commented, that this case will increase Donald Trump's chances of success. You can only imagine that his detractors know that and understand it and are willing to do it anyway. I'm beginning to think that what Trump's primary function is in the media space is as a kind of magnet for attention in order that ordinary corruption and hypocrisy can continue. Whether these charges are legitimate or not, and whether or not this will amplify Trump's message and serve as a kind of martyrdom, is not what I'm primarily interested in. What I'm interested in, and I believe you should be most interested in, is why is Trump still occupying the same cultural space that he has been occupying ever since he first stood for election? He oddly represents anti-establishmentism. He represents the voice of many dispossessed and angry Americans. And even if you believe, like I do, that Trump isn't going to meaningfully address those problems, why are those problems not being addressed elsewhere?
First, the historic indictment, now the political fallout. President Biden deliberately avoiding the topic.
I'm not going to talk about Trump's indictment.
But Republicans tonight are slamming it as a Democratic DA trying to take out President Biden's top political opponent with a bogus legal case.
You already know that these legal charges are somewhat trumped up, that it's a misdemeanor that's being conflated with a felony, that there are comparable crimes, if indeed they are crimes, which I suppose we're saying that they are, that have been committed by the Democrat Party in the 2016 election, specifically using legal fees to fund the Steele dossier designed to discredit Trump, which was similarly a misuse of campaign funds. Although the indictment is still sealed, every indication is that this case is extremely flimsy on the merits and especially shabby given the historic import of the first ever indictment of a former president. Hush payments may be sleazy, but they're legal. The violation of the law in the Daniels payment may have been in how it was logged in the Trump Organization accounts. The payment was agreed to near the end of the 2016 campaign, and then Trump fixer Michael Cohen paid it with his own funds, and Trump reimbursed him across 2017. In the Trump Organization books, the payments were called legal expenses, suggesting they were for ongoing legal work. This was dishonest, but at most is a misdemeanor. The idea of going after a former president with all the political consequences involved on such a piddling charge was so self-evidently absurd that no minimally self-respecting prosecutor would do it. So it sounds like something illegal happened, but something that is a minor misdemeanor is not likely the genuine motivation for all of this furore. It seems that what's more likely the motivation is a desire to bring down Trump. And the desire to bring down Trump has remained consistent. Then there's the problem that the campaign finance offence would be a violation of federal and not state law, and such a crime has never been prosecuted in New York. There's also a question of whether the statute of limitations has expired on these supposed offences and on the credibility of the two-star witnesses, confessed fraudster Michael Cohen and a porn star, among other issues. Whatever else is true about this case, it seems that it's not the kind of robust catch-all case that is required to bring down a figure like Trump without the accompanying risk that it turns him into a kind of political martyr. And also what I feel like morally and ethically is you know and I know that the motivation behind all this is not, oh no, a law's been violated, we must do something about it. What's actually happening is Trump continues to be a threat to centralised authoritarian politics, so he's having to be taken out of the game. Whether you like Trump or don't like Trump, what you should be interested in addressing is the systemic problems that have led to his rise and the ongoing inability to address them. What this case shows us, as well as the media reporting of it, is that the media needs Trump and the Democratic Party needs Donald Trump, precisely because they are unwilling to make the necessary legislative and political changes that would make Trump irrelevant. From the beginning of his rise, Donald Trump has been able to say, this is a corrupt system, I stand between you and them, they don't want me, they want you, and I'm preventing them from getting you. And this rhetoric remains incendiary and effective because no one is willing to make the kind of changes that would make Trump redundant. If you could meaningfully change big pharma prices, I know a bill has been introduced, but I also know that it's ultimately meaningless and doesn't go far enough. If you did not have a Democrat Party that was funded by the military-industrial complex, the financial industry that was in the thrall of Wall Street, then Donald Trump would not be such a powerful and effective opponent. Donald Trump would become cut off at the knees if the Democrat Party, or indeed the Republican Party, or any political movement was interested in and committed to representing the needs and requirements of ordinary working Americans. It's the inability and lack of desire to address this that's led to Trump's rise, and it continues to fuel the Trump phenomena right now, when some people thought, oh, this is over now, this is irrelevant. The fact that he's polling higher than Ron DeSantis, the fact that his arrest is garnering so much attention, shows you that there's still an unaddressed need at the heart of our political systems, that there is a requirement for a new kind of politics. You know me, I don't personally believe that Trump is the answer. I know a lot of you do. But the problem is still not being addressed. Hello there, you awakening wonders. Today's show is brought to you by Manscaped, who are the best in men's below the waist and below the snout and within the ear grooming. Their products are precision engineered tools like our analysis for your family jewels. Manscaped's performance package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. You get the lawnmower. This trimmer is the future of grooming, and some say the greatest ball trimmer ever. You get the Weed Whacker crop preserver ball deodorant, although if there is an odour, I mean, there just shouldn't be an odour on your balls. But if there is, this will rid you of it. The Crop Reviver toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your goodies. In this case, the goodies are the products, not your reproductive organs. Join over 7 million men worldwide, not literally, that would be unhygienic, you'd be ankle deep in pubic hair, who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code BRAND at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code BRAND. Oh, it's really actually quite satisfying because you can hear it. Can you hear that? That's the sound of youth returning. This is from Robert Reich in The Guardian, writing about the 2016 election campaign. Trump convinced many blue-collar workers feeling ignored by Washington that he was their champion. Clinton did not convince them that she was. Her decades of public service ended up being a negative, not a positive. She was indubitably part of the establishment, the epitome of decades of policies that left these blue-collar workers in the dust. Trump galvanized millions of blue-collar voters living in communities that never recovered from the tidal wave of factory closings. He promised to bring back jobs, revive manufacturing, and get tough on trade and immigration. Democrats had occupied the White House for 16 of the 24 years before Trump's election, and in that time scored some important victories for working families. But Democrats did nothing to change the vicious cycle of wealth and power that had rigged the economy for the benefit of those at the top and undermined the working class. As Democratic pollster Stanley Greenberg concluded after the 2016 election, Democrats don't have a white working class problem, they have a working class problem, which progressives have been reluctant to address honestly or boldly. The fact is that Democrats have lost support with all working class voters across the electorate. In the first 2 years of the Bill Clinton and Barack Obama administrations, Democrats controlled both houses of Congress. Yet both Clinton and Obama advocated free trade agreements without providing millions of blue-collar workers who consequently lost their jobs as any means of getting new ones that paid at least as well. Clinton pushed for NAFTA and for China joining the World Trade Organization, and Obama sought to restore the confidence of Wall Street instead of completely overhauling the banking system. The ongoing focus of opposition to Trump continues to be the vilification of Trump himself, but not only that, the vilification of people that support Trump. There's never been an appetite to meaningfully address what this phenomena is motivated by. Instead of condemning Trump, instead of condemning people that support Trump, what's required is a reckoning. Why are people interested in this type of rhetoric and this type of politics? Of course, it's really easy to condemn people for being ignorant or racist or fond of hyperbole. But don't you feel that after the administrations of Clinton and Obama, people felt kind of weary of the empty promises and meaningless rhetoric around social change and hope and optimism and coming together and caring for one another, when in fact what it delivered were victories for the very kind of elites that rhetoric is supposed to oppose. So Donald Trump was able, from when he first appeared on the public scene, to say, I'm genuinely different. Even in the primaries, as Matt Taibbi pointed out on this show, he was able to say, do you think Jeb Bush is going to do anything about Big Pharma? His campaign is run by a member of the Johnson & Johnson family. This rhetoric has remained effective throughout his campaigning. In the memorable televised debates with Hillary Clinton, he was able to say, I use the techniques that you legislate for, that you put in place. I use the same thing that your donors use. The only way to end the phenomena of Donald Trump is to address the problems that led to Donald Trump. Mass disenchantment with the whole political class, mass disenchantment with an entirely biased media. But because those problems cannot be addressed without meaningfully changing the power structures that dominate not only American politics but global politics, that can never happen. So what has to continue is this carnival of condemnation around Donald Trump that places him at the centre of our media landscape and risks bringing Donald Trump back to power. Now, I know a lot of you want that, and frankly my position is that whether you have a Republican in the White House or a Democrat in the White House, you will ultimately have a country that is dominated by the same financial, economic and globalist interests that benefit from either party being in place. That's why they fund both parties. That's why people in Congress own stocks and shares in companies that fund both of them. Essentially, that the system is so rigged and so broken that a figure like Trump is in some quarters very popular because his rhetoric matches the emotional timbre of many people, and his opponents are willing to use him as the avatar and deposit of their ire rather than accepting that what's required is significant change to the systems that they participate in. If there were a political party and a political leader standing on a mandate of, we are going to meaningfully change big pharma prices, we're going to stop the funding of political parties by corporate donors, we are going to stop people in Congress owning stocks and shares in the companies that they legislate, we're not going to allow the military industrial complex to lobby for wars that ultimately benefit them and devastate domestic and foreign communities. If there was a party and a candidate that could not only say that but deliver on it, I feel that many of us would be right behind that movement. In fact, that's the kind of movement that I want to participate in. I know a lot of you think that Trump is the solution, and I'm sympathetic to that. I've always been sympathetic to that. I personally don't think that Trump will deliver the kind of change that many of you believe he's capable of. But what I entirely agree with you on is the fact that Donald Trump vocally, verbally, publicly is using the exact kind of anti-establishment rhetoric and anger that is required for the type of change that we are talking about. Both stood by as corporations hammered trade unions, the backbone of the white working class. They failed to reform labour laws to allow workers to form unions with a simple up or down majority vote, or even to impose meaningful penalties on companies that violated labour protections. Clinton deregulated Wall Street before the crash. Obama allowed the street to water down attempts to deregulate it after the crash. Obama protected Wall Street from the consequences of its gambling addiction through a giant taxpayer-funded bailout, but allowed millions of underwater homeowners to drown. Both Clinton and Obama turned their backs on campaign finance reform. In 2008, Obama was the first presidential nominee since Richard Nixon to reject public financing in his primary and general election campaigns, and he never followed up on his re-election promise to pursue a constitutional amendment to overturning Citizens United versus FEC, the 2010 Supreme Court opinion opening wider the floodgates to big money in politics. Under Obama, the Democrats used the kind of rhetoric that Trump is now using, made the same kind of pledges that Trump is now making, that they'll take money out of politics, that there'll be meaningful electoral reform, that they won't accept campaign donations from big donors. But none of those things actually happened. What happened in office is that Obama bailed out the banks and made no meaningful changes to the way that political parties are funded. Although Clinton and Obama faced increasingly hostile Republican Congresses, they could have rallied the working class and built a coalition to grab back power from the emerging oligarchy, yet they chose not to. Why? Clinton, Obama, and many congressional Democrats sought the votes of the suburban swing voter, so-called soccer mums in the 1990s, and affluent politically independent professionals in the 2000s, who supposedly determine electoral outcomes and turn their backs on the working class. They also drank from the same campaign funding trough as the Republicans, big corporations, Wall Street, and the very wealthy. A direct line connects the 4-decade stagnation of wages with the bailout of Wall Street, the rise of the Tea Party and briefly Occupy, and the successes of Sanders and Trump in 2016. As Eduardo Porter of the New York Times notes, since the year 2000, Republican presidential candidates have steadily gained in strength in America's poorer counties, while Democrats have lost ground. In 2016, Trump won 58% of the vote in the counties with the poorest 10% of the population. His share was 31% in the richest. By 2016, Americans understood full well that wealth and power had moved to the top. Big money had rigged our politics. The most powerful force in American politics today continues to be anti-establishment fury, a rigged system. There is no longer a left or right. There is no longer a moderate centre. Trump is not the cause of our divided nation. He is the symptom of a rigged system that was already dividing us. Those of you that really love Donald Trump, I can really identify with why you like Donald Trump, because he's like a wrecking ball in an establishment that does need to be brought down and destroyed. And perhaps at some stage we can have a longer conversation about why I don't think Trump will be able to implement the kind of changes that are required. But for now, what's important is to focus on the fact that we have no one in systemic American politics that can countenance a figure like Donald Trump, because they're not willing to address the problems that have led to his rise. They're not willing to take the money out of politics. They're not willing to have a Congress that represents ordinary Americans. The media class are not willing to say, we've been ultimately operating on behalf of corporate and political interests for the last 50 years. We've lost our way. We're incapable of being honest. At this point, the ongoing fetishization and vilification of Donald Trump is ridiculous. And whether or not we get now the images of Donald Trump in handcuffs or Donald Trump thrown in prison, what we will definitely get is a divided America that doesn't have to address the problems that led to Trump in the first place. You've got an inept president in Joe Biden that's not keeping the promises that he made in order to get into office. You have a Congress that owns stocks and shares in the companies that they're supposed to be regulating. You have two political parties that accept funding and donations from the corporate interests that they're supposed to be protecting the ordinary population from. In short, you still have the conditions that led to Trump. So you might think this makes Donald Trump a martyr and will lead to him ultimately becoming president again. Or you might think this will lead to Donald Trump being thrown in prison. Is there anyone that thinks that this will lead to a better America, more fairness, more justice, more harmony, more togetherness, an ability to create a new type of politics? Whether or not this leads to cinematic images of Donald Trump in cuffs and ultimately in jail, whether or not it leads to another Trump presidency, what I'm sure it will not lead to is the deep reckoning that America needs to undertake about its political systems, its alliances with corporations, and its inability to serve the needs of ordinary Americans who now, more than ever, need a government and political parties and political leaders that are willing to respond to their needs. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments in the chat. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these. Turn on the notification bell and subscribe right now. But more important than any of that, unlike Donald Trump, please stay free.